F1 is back in Miami. There's so much performances and jumping and trumpets and violins and drums and orchestras. I actually stopped watching at some point because I was afraid it's going to take out most of the energy before even the race began. Anyway, racing eventually began, and yeah, here we go. So Checo pulled away nicely at the beginning. No challenges from the cars behind him as we expected. And as expected, Max did pretty much make up every single place up until second by lap 19. Was within one and a half seconds behind Checo when he eventually pitted. Now Max stayed out because he started on the harder tire alongside Lewis, and Checo started on the medium tire, which now obviously meant that Max could go longer. Now that's where the race was won for me, and I think pretty much obvious was when after Checo pitted for the new sets and Max continued on his old sets of hards. That's when Max really started to push in clean air, and that's where he really started to push. That gap between lap 25 and lap 45 was just amazing. So that's where Max won the race because it meant you could pit later with a fresher when by the time he pitted he was going to have a fresher set of mediums, which was lap 45, and that left him with about 12 laps of fresh tires. By then, Checo's tires was obviously even over hard tires, but they'd done more than 20 laps at the time, so it was always going to be mincemeat for the grinders. So yeah, Max won standing from the back, not a surprise. A Red Bull won too, not a surprise. And we're 20 seconds ahead of the nearest car, not a surprise. So yeah, Christian must be thanking his lucky stars or not lucky stars. Well, it's good fortunes, good times for them. And yeah, fourth 1, 2, and 5 races. Um, the fairy tale continues for Red Bull. Now, Alonso next. The very, very boring race. Was never going to challenge the Red Bulls. Finished 20 seconds behind them, and the Ferrari couldn't just do anything. Ferrari's again. It's just anyway. Yeah. Another podium for Aston Martin, who are still in fairy tale land. I don't think they're doomed to be. Yeah, fourth podium in 5 races. In the other time, they only finished fourth. So another great performance for Alonso. Pretty much unchallenged the whole race, went alone. Contracts to his teammate who qualified 18th, I think, bad qualifying. Stuck in the DRS train, eventually finished 12th, so nothing exciting for him. But yeah, another solid performance from Aston Martin. And to think that having actually bought any upgrades to the car just shows what good development R&D they had. Now it's to see whether they survive that onslaught of upgrades to be bought by other teams in Amola. But yeah, good performance from Aston Martin. I think pets eat less food than the way Ferrari eats its tires. That's pretty much the story of that car. Pets eat less food than Ferrari eats its tires. That's pretty much the story of the Ferrari. Brilliant in qualifying, but when the race comes, they're pretty much nowhere. Couldn't even challenge the Aston Martin. Couldn't even challenge the Mercedes. Charles was stuck pretty much in no one's land the whole race. Started seventh, finished seventh, and pretty much both were complaining about how it's very difficult to drive that car in high speed, very difficult, or rather, how the car is very unstable in high speed, how the car eats its tires, how the car overheats the tires. So, if it's not being unreliable and strategy, it's the car. It's just always something wrong at Ferrari. That's it. I'm done. Not gonna talk more. On to the next one. George did what it does best, bring out the performance out of a shitty car. Reasonable qualifying in P7 and the P1 of the Ferraris. Actually, both Ferraris to P4. Great drive actually by him. Kind of really fought him. He is the best driver in that Mercedes team, and I repeat, he is the best driver in that Mercedes garage. So he's better than Lewis in my view, and will continue to be so. Mercedes praying for, especially Lewis praying for the big upgrades. Now, I don't think they'll be the only one to bring upgrades. In fact, they won't be. So I don't think they'll improve from where they are. Maybe catch up to Aston, but Red Bull's too far ahead, and it's not like their factory shut down in any way. So, yeah, great performance from George. Solid start from Lewis from P13 after shit qualifying. But he did start on the hard tire, just like Max, which meant that he had the fresher medium tire at the end of the race. Great passes, great second stint. Finished nicely in P6. So solid performances, and yeah, this is pretty much what I expect them to be for the rest of the season. So, upgrades or not, this is where they'll be. Not a bad performance from Alpine, especially after previous two races. Aggressive strategy killed them. They could have finished fifth or sixth and seventh around there. I think they would have beaten one of the Mercedes and one of the Ferraris. But pitting earlier than the other cars meant they killed their tires too early. So towards the end of the race, they pretty much didn't have much grip as compared to everyone else around them. And the fuel saving, of course, isn't quite good. I think fuel consumption of that Honda engine in that car is just too much for them. So they pretty much had no grip and had to do a lot of lift and coasting towards the end of the race. So I think they could have one of them would have finished in the top six, but not bad from the two races they've had. And I'm pretty sure they're looking to more upgrades in Imola. So after Charles's qualifying crash in Q3 gave Kevin Magnussen a great start for the race in P4, well, no one expected them to finish there anyway. Um, that's a mini Ferrari, so that means also mini tag deck in terms of Ferrari relevance. Meant that he went all the way down to finish in P10. So yeah, it's still a point to write home about. Nico had a pretty much difficult race, qualified down there in P12, not bad, but Tad Dag and being stuck in a DRS train meant he'll finish in P15. So, difficult race for Alpine, but still came home with the points, and that's what you get for being a mini Ferrari. Tad Dag. Solid P11 for AlphaTauri from Yuki Tsunoda, who's been very consistent this season. Even the slowest car on the grid after McLaren, I believe. De Vries finishing in P18, pretty much stuck in DRS traffic the whole season. But yeah, that car just doesn't have any pace, no qualifying pace, no race pace, nothing. So I have nothing to say about them other than they have two good drivers who are just driving doing what they can with the car. So yeah, nothing more, nothing less. Valtteri Bottas in P13, his teammate finished in P16. Yeah, pretty much in that squabble with AlphaTauri and Williams. Yeah, it just depends on which weekend which one is luckier at the point. I think those three are pretty much at the same level in terms of performance. No one's quicker than the other, so it just depends on tire strategies and the luck on who's ahead of who, I think, in the weekend. So yeah, that's what I can say about them, really. Nothing more I can say about these two. McLaren being stuck in a battle between AlphaTauri and them and Alfa Romeo is pretty much the deepest disappointment of the season so far for me. The car just doesn't have any pace. It's nowhere, and it's stuck in that stupid DRS change that happened in positions between 12th and 20th. They were nowhere alongside the Williamses and the AlphaTauris and the Alfa Romeos. Pretty much nothing to write about. The difference between these teams now for me is just tire tag and the different driving styles on which driver is better than the other. But in terms of race pace, they're pretty much close, and it's really difficult to find a clear, better car compared to the other. Maybe the upgrades in Imola would probably bring a more clearer difference between the teams in terms of performance. But for now, any of those teams being McLaren, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Williams, they're pretty much stuck in the same position every Grand Prix and fighting amongst each other. So there's not much excitement to talk about there in terms of within the teams and delivering results. But for me, I just feel like all those teams are just too close together to see who does better than the other. And maybe it will take maybe two or three races from now to clearly state which team in the right trajectory. Now, it's good for F1 in terms of competitiveness because you never know who's going to finish in the points. But because there was no incidents and no safety cars in front, they pretty much stayed where they qualified. So there's nothing actually exciting to talk about after that. Red Bull won the race 1-2, fourth 1-2 of the season. Ferrari's tight there continues. George Russell outperforming Lewis again. Yeah, pretty much the same thing happened. So it's hopefully to Imola and the next three races which will come simultaneously would be more exciting. But for me, a Lucom race, it was late for me. I had to watch the race at around 10 p.m., 9 p.m. So I had to stay up for a boring race, which isn't nice. But hey, we love what we love. So that's it for Miami. finally back to civilization in Imola. So we'll see how things go from there. And very exciting what all the other teams bring, or all the teams bring in terms of upgrades. So yeah, we'll see how Imola goes. And once again, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. Please offer suggestions and improvements and what you'd like to see in the future, and continue to liking and subscribing. And remember to start your engines.